Okay, perfect. So should we start, Loic?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone. We are really happy to have you today in this session on how to measure the impact of your learning initiatives. This is actually something very challenging, I think, for most of us. And so this is why we really wanted to tackle this topic with Loic and to give you some tips and tricks for 2020. So we are a bit in advance. So I'm Antoinette Bertrand, Digital Learning Manager at MySkillCamp, and my role is to support our customers by implementing a learning culture, a digital learning culture within this structure, and making sure that they reach a nice engagement rate of the users. And I will present this webinar with Loic, my colleague, who will introduce himself.
Yes, so I am Loic and I'm glad to be here with you today. So I'm learning curator. So basically what I do is to help the customers of my skill camp to find the right piece of content depending on their needs. So we can actually go for free content like TED Talks, YouTube videos, article, games, and everything. But we can also go for paid content from our learning providers. So we work closely with Good Habits, Kokoroe, Coursera as well, Udemy, and everything. And we try to build impactful learning path for our customers, mixing this kind of both free content but also paid content to take the most of both sources.
Thank you, Loic. So of course we have also, we are curious today to know who you are, what is your role, what are your expectations also of this webinar on how to measure the impact of your learning initiative. So please feel free to actually use the chat and present yourself and your expectations, and we will try to answer your questions and meet your expectations during this webinar. So thank you everyone for sharing those information. So don't hesitate to use the chat to present yourself and give your expectations of this session. I think like we can move forward and give the time to people to answer for questions. So it's important, obviously, to set objectives, and we have set objectives for this webinar session. And we hope we will meet those 3 objectives. Please don't hesitate to share your feedback at the end of the session. And so what we would like to reach for this session is really to make you understand the Kirkpatrick model, so to be able to evaluate a training initiative. And so in this Kirkpatrick model, you have 4 different levels. And for you to be able to explain the differences between those 4 levels, and also be able to differentiate cold evaluation from hot evaluation. So those are our 3 objectives for this session. And so I have a quick question for you guys. Have you ever felt like that when you followed a training? Meaning that, okay, what am I doing here? What are the objectives of this training program? I'm registered, but actually I don't know what I'm doing here. What's the added value? And so this is why actually, if you don't know what you want to get from the training program you designed as a training designer, if you don't know what you want to get, where you want to go, and how actually you will measure the impact of your training program, you can make sure that this is how people will feel during the session you are delivering. So this is important to set objectives and make them visible, and of course market your training with the objectives and added value for your audience, and set expectation and KPIs to make sure that what you design is actually going in the right way. So thank you, Loic, you can move forward. So this is just what I explained. And we wanted to introduce to you the Kirkpatrick model to explain a bit how we measure the training initiatives that we launch.
Yes,
I give you the floor.
I will take over. So the Kirkpatrick model is actually a really old model that has been used actually to assess kind of the impact of a training, but a face-to-face training. But it's actually something we can still use for digital learning activities. But first, before going through this Kirkpatrick model, I think we might need to take a step back and maybe asking ourselves why we need actually to evaluating the impact. And for me, there are two main reasons. The first one is just to measure effectiveness and return on investment. Launching training initiatives requires a lot of time, money, and also a lot of energy. So it's really important to measure the effectiveness and the usefulness of the training, to not just build trainings for the sake of building trainings. We have to have kind of a purpose behind it and have something out of it. That's the first thing. And the second thing, which is really important to me, is to improve and to get feedback, because sometimes we build things but we don't have feedback from the end users, and that's really important to evaluate the impact through the Kirkpatrick model, to actually have feedback in order to improve this session, this training, but also the upcoming session, upcoming trainings. And also it will help us to kind of gain new knowledge and gain new skills about how to develop training initiatives. That's the two main important reasons why we should constantly evaluate the impact of our learning activities. And then we have this Kirkpatrick model, so divided, as Antoinette said, in four main dimensions. So we have the satisfaction, which is basically the learner experience level. Then we have the learning, it's what the learner understand after taking the training. We have the behavior, which is related to the operational level, what this training has enabled to change among the learners. And then we have the performance, which is basically how this training has an impact on the strategic level, on the organization level, on the performance, on the KPIs of the organization. So basically, to make it more clear, behind satisfaction, we can have this kind of objective that I want to build a playful and a good learning experience for the learners, just something that is enjoyable, for the learner. On the learning and pedagogical level, I want my learners to understand and explain. It's the first step before moving forward, is to understand the main concept of the training. Then we have the behavior, where there I would like to want my learners to apply what they've learned. Okay, they understand in the second level, but then they need to apply what they learn in their daily jobs, to change behavior in order to be more productive, in order to be more efficient and everything. And finally, on the fourth level, which is the harder to get there, because it requires a lot of time to do it, and also a lot of resources to measure this level, is I want my training to support actually the business, to really have an impact on the business, having an impact on the main KPIs of the organization. So don't worry, we will go through all the dimensions in details and how you can measure every dimension with different channels. So basically we have the section, so it's basically evaluate the acceptance and the reaction of the learners on the training. Then we have the learning, which is basically evaluating the knowledge of the learner after taking the training. Then we have the behavior, so it's basically assess if the training has involved any, has implied, any change in the employees' activities. And finally, the performance, as I said, is how the training has an impact on the organization performance. So for the first level, which is the satisfaction level, which is kind of the easiest to measure, it's basically assessing the learner reaction. It's simple as is the learner enjoy the learning experience? Does he want to go on with the learning experience, or is it painful for him to take this training? So it can be done with three main things. It's just a few examples. There are many other ways to do so. But first, you can ask a simple question during the training, like for instance, when the learner reach the middle of the training, you can ask, do you appreciate following this training? Yes or no? And you will have this kind of percentage of person who enjoy the training when you reach the half of the training. Then you can use a questionnaire evaluating the training at the end. So that's why we've built, we have a template to show you, and that you will be able to use by yourself as well, because we will share this questionnaire, this template with you, and you will be able to modify it and everything. And one thing which is more on the qualitative side is doing some interviews. I think 10 to 15 interviews are way enough, because you will get more insight with that. And it's basically to have feedback on how the learners have felt the learning experience, and how you can improve, and how did they feel about the learning experience overall. So here, guys, I just want to share with you this little questionnaire we've built. So it's something that you can use by yourself as well. So we have some question, and we would like to train, for instance, to evaluate the NPS. And one objective we can set up for ourselves is, for instance, to have an NPS above plus 25, Then we try to evaluate the return on time invested. We can assess as well specific aspect of the training. So for instance, just the content, the learning activities such as the quiz, the projects that has been integrated into this training. We have the format, the duration. We can also assess the communication about the training, because it's a really important aspect as well. And then we can ask really question about feedback. So for instance, how can we improve this learning experience? And basically this questionnaire is something that you can put at the end, of a training. So you can actually have quantitative measure with the NPS and this question about how would you assess each aspect of the training. But you will also get insight from this question, and it will help you to improve and to see how the learners reacted to this specific training. So we will send you the questionnaire template by email after this webinar, so you can copy paste and modify everything, just cut some questions or add anything if you need. But it's something that you can use at the end of each training initiative,
Thank you, Loic. So here is the second level of the Kirkpatrick model. So is the measurement of the learning. So really evaluate learners' knowledge after taking the training. And actually, so this is linked to the general level of objectives. So it's important, obviously, to set the objective that you want to reach. And then here measure by creating small quizzes during the training, for example, or at the end of the training, create a final test with a minimum of rate to reach for the participants. So you have different way to actually assess during the learning and the training initiative this learning measure. Okay, and for example, I can give you an example of objective to reach and how to measure the KPIs that we want to reach. So for example, we can have for a sales team understand how the CRM works and how to navigate on it. So it could be the objective of the training program. So based on the learning level again, and be able to complete the necessary fields in the CRM with the right information. So this is really what they have to reach at the end of this training program, and how you will measure that they get there. It's, for example, by creating a certification at the end of the training based on multiple questions, and have, for example, 55% of the participants that got the certificate. It could be a measure that you set to make sure that you reach the objectives that you set for this level. Okay, so this is really about the second level of the Kirkpatrick model, and based on the objective of the general training objective that you set at the beginning. Loic, I can go to the next slide. So we have a short question for you guys, and you can use the chat to answer this little question. So a learning rate of 13% means that the learner hasn't learned anything. Is it true or is it false for you? So what do you think? A learning rate of 13% means that the learner hasn't learned anything. Look, answered. Great. We will see if you are correct. True. Okay. All right. We have a false. So let's go. Sorry, guys. So let's see after maybe the answer of Florence. What's the correct answer? So maybe Loïc, you can go to the next slide. So actually, this is false. Sorry. Yeah, yeah, it's right, Florence. This is still something, but why actually it doesn't mean that the learner hasn't learned anything. And Loïc, you can go to the next slide. It's because figures and numbers are just numbers. So actually, in your training and activity, you could have set some questions on an ambiguous way, or too complex, or maybe not linked to the content. So this is also something you have to analyze to make sure that the 13% are coming from something you know. So to know really the reality and not some ideas that you could have from the learner's level. So it's really important to make sure that the question, the quizzes that you are creating are appropriate and content related, not that complex, etc. Otherwise, you could have figures that don't show the reality of the learning experience and the learner level. So thank you, Loïc. And now I give you the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Antoinette. Let's move on to the third level, which is, okay, our learners are satisfied with the learning experience. It's fantastic. Our learners seem to have learned a lot of things. They seem to understand what we are talking about. But if they don't apply anything on the day-to-day job, like maybe the training is not as useful as we thought. So basically, the third level is all about measuring the impact of the behavioral changes in employees' activities. So how can we measure that? Basically, it's all about making sure, for instance, if we have training about a new tool, for instance, if we try to implement a new CRM, we try to measure if the CRM has been basically enriched with new data. And one target we can set is basically the commercial population has completed the data on the CRM up to 90% of the data, So it's another measure you can undertake in order to know if this training has implied any changes and any change the behavior, into the activities, into the day-to-day of the collaborators, into the day-to-day to the employees. So one thing you can do in order to measure that is try to go for A/B testing, and we will go further into a few minutes into what is A/B testing and how you can use it in learning and development. But basically, it's all about the first step is to define your objective and have a good understanding of what you try to achieve with this learning, because it's not all about providing a good learning experience. It's not all about making sure that my learners understand something, but it's also about what they would do after the training. If they don't do anything after the training, maybe it's not something that we want to have, and maybe we want them to achieve some activities and everything, to achieve some new behaviors in the day-to-day. So we need to have a clear idea of what we want them to achieve after completing this training. Antoinette, do you take over?
Yes, so the first level of the Kirkpatrick model is the performance. So how to measure the performance of your training program. And so it's the way you will assess the impact of your training program on the business outcomes. So really related to the return on investment. And so it's of course important to set a strategic objective before the training and the design of the training, and understand also the purpose of this training program. So why actually you have to create a training program for your business? This is the first question to be asked. And then it's of course important to be aligned with the objectives of your company or your structure. Otherwise, the request is not clear, or the objectives of the company are not clear, what could be also possible. And then you will be able to set the KPIs related to this strategic objective. And so, for example, you could have a comparison between two teams, one that had the training, that got the training, and one who didn't, and see, okay, for example, the turnover of those two teams, for example, for the sales department. And for example, another objective you could set is, okay, I want to increase the contract renewal process. This is my objective, and this is related to the objective of the company. And how will I measure this objective is by having 20% of contract renewal increase per customer portfolio. So it's really to have figures that will show that I reached my objective. So this is important to have the objective and the KPIs related to it. Thank you, Loic.
So I have a question for you. According to you, which dimensions the learning manager can easily measure? Is it satisfaction? Is it learning? Is it behavior? Is it performance? Or is it a mix of everything, a mix of both, a mix of three of them? According to you, which dimension can a learning manager measure quite easily, you know? Let us know in the chat. France is going for satisfaction. Yeah. Do we have anything else? Jonathan has maybe another answer. A and B. Okay, Jonathan. You went for a mix of both. Maybe that's the right way to go. So no more drum rolls. Let's move on. And actually, Jonathan, you were right. It's actually satisfaction and learning. And why is that? Is because basically the learning manager would be able to measure satisfaction and learning because they are directly related to the training. So we can actually know right away if the learner has a good learning experience and what did he get from this training? What did he remember? What did he understand from this training? On the other hand, we have the behavior and the performance. It's much harder to measure because it's more related to the global project and to an holistic approach. Indeed, like it's not only related to the training, but it's also related to other training initiative. It's related also to internal communication. It's related to each individual as well. It's related to a lot of different factors. So it's really hard to measure these two dimensions, even though they are really important. But what you can do as a learning manager or someone who is working in the learning and development industry is to make recommendation and to work really hands in hands with the project manager, the subject matter expert, or the business sponsor in order to set up this kind of program where you will be able to measure the behavior and to set up relevant KPIs. So don't get frustrated if you feel that you are not kind of able to measure behavior and performance, because it's really hard to measure. However, like, you can make some recommendation and work really in collaboration with the product manager, the subject expert matter, and the business sponsor in order to develop a program in order to measure the behavior and the performance, because it's something that is possible, but you will definitely need more help and more resources to do so. Antoinette, do you take over?
So, okay, we will measure at each stage actually of the training program. So to be able to measure at the right time, it's important, I think, to ask yourself the right questions so that you can move forward. And so, okay, what do you want to know and when actually during your training program? What are the learning objectives? What do you want to measure? So which tool also will you use to measure the impact of your learning initiatives? And so it's important to ask you some questions also to make sure that you grasp what you want to know and analyze of your training program. So like you can move forward. There are two different ways of evaluating a training program. So you have the hot evaluation and you have the cold evaluation. So the hot evaluation, the specifications are quite obvious, I think. It's really immediately, so right after or even before, during a training, that you will assess some KPIs, some measures, okay? And it's more recommended, of course, for the satisfaction level and the learning level, but the behavior and the performance, it's more difficult to assess immediately, for example, after the training program that you have designed. So it's really more for the satisfaction, so really assess, okay, how people enjoyed the training, the experience, etc. And you can actually send the NPS survey at that moment. And the learning, you can, of course, evaluate the learning level during the training and even before. So this is important to know. We'll come to that point later. But this is more for this kind, those two levels that you can use hot evaluation. For cold evaluation, it's you can actually use it on a more frequent way. You can send evaluation a few times after the training. And it's better to actually use this kind of evaluation later in time. So it's more adapted for the learning level. So you can actually assess the learning program and the retention, the knowledge that people kept from the training program, like 3 months later, 6 months later, by actually, for example, sending a test or a project and you on which you can assess the learning. The behavior, it's really later that you will see the difference, the changes that people put in place after the training, and the performance, of course, it's really later in time that you will be able to see the impact. So Loic, you can move forward. If we see those different moments on a timeline, the assessment moment, you could actually assess before the training the learning level, so the knowledge that people have before starting the training program. It's a quite interesting insight to actually see the difference between before the training and then after the training. During the learning also you can assess hot learning, so it's really through quizzes, etc. That you can assess the learning level. And then right after the training session, you can evaluate the reaction, the satisfaction of the people regarding the learning that you delivered. So what are the experience and, for example, the NPS. And then you have the cold evaluation to evaluate the learning, again, the retention. And then you can assess the behavior way later, and like 6 months to 1 year later, assess the performance of your training program, because you will be able, hopefully to see a difference and an impact on, for example, your sales revenue. And it's really related to the key performance indicators of your company, if you have set correctly the objective before and the KPIs. Thank you, Loic.
So as I said on the chat, we have a little quiz for you. We have four different situations, and we would like you to guess, for instance, if this situation is more related to satisfaction, learning, behavior, performance, and if it's related to hot evaluation and cold evaluation. So here, the first situation is a questionnaire 2 months after the training to know if the learners liked the learning experience. Is it more satisfaction, learning, behavior, or performance? And is it more hot evaluation or cold evaluation according to you? Let us know in the chat. So Florence is going for satisfaction and cold. Farah is going for cold as well. Satisfaction and cold. Okay, Florence, Farah, and Chris, you are right. It's exactly that. It's satisfaction because we try to assess the learning experience, and it's cold because we do it 2 months after the training. Well done, guys. The second one is an analysis on the turnover, comparing those from the sales teams who have taken the training versus those who haven't. So the measure here is about the turnover, and we are actually comparing sales teams. Is it satisfaction, learning, behavior, performance? And is it hot or cold evaluation? Florence is going for hot. Chris is going for behavior and cold. Jonathan is going for performance and cold. Farah is going for behavior, and Florence is unsure about behavior or performance. So indeed, we all agree it's cold evaluation, and it's actually related to little bug here, but it's related to the performance because we are comparing the turnover. So it's actually a key metrics for the company. But indeed, it's also related to the behavior because the behaviors implies probably implies an improvement of the performance, but it's more a performance dimension. Here we are doing an analysis on the work environment to determine if the time spent on the new CRM has decreased or not. Is it satisfaction, learning, behavior, performance, or hot or cold evaluation? Farah is going for cold evaluation and behavior. Cool. Do we have anything else? So we try to assess the time spent on the new CRM, on the work environment, on the daily job. So Florence is saying behavior and performance, and also cold. And Jonathan, Chris are agreeing with Florence. So here it's basically cold evaluation. I think we all agree on that. However, it will be more related to behavior because it's a use of a new tool. It doesn't imply necessarily a strategic lever for the company. Like even though people are using the new CRM, it doesn't imply that the KPIs in terms of strategic lever, in terms of revenue, in terms of satisfaction, improve as well. So first we have the behavior lever. It's something that the learner change in their behavior. That's new habits they are creating. So using a new tool, and the new tool will lead eventually to performance through increase in terms of revenue, in terms of satisfaction of the end customers and everything. So because they are using a new tool, it's a change of behavior, but it will probably end up increasing the performance of the company if the new CRM is more efficient, for instance. And finally, last situation, a questionnaire to check knowledge right after completing the training. So it's basically assessing the knowledge of the learners. Is it more satisfaction, learning, behavior, or performance? And is it hot and cold evaluation? learning and hot. Okay, I think you got it right. We have 100% good answer, so well done. It's actually learning because we try to assess only the knowledge, and also it's hot because we do it right after completing the training, so it's really fresh. It's actually fresh in the memory of the learner. And then the last point we want to go through with Antoinette is the A/B testing. So basically what you can do in order to measure the effectiveness of learning is basically set up two different groups of learners. You have one group of, for instance, sales teams that have followed the training, and one other group that haven't followed the training. And then you compare on the same dimension what is the outcomes that you got. For instance, if the group A that have taken the training have a better learning percentage and got better rate of correct answers to the quiz than the group B, and in terms of behavior, they are more likely to use a new CRM. It probably means that your training had an impact on their learning and had an impact on the behavior, you know. So basically, doing A/B testing. A/B testing is basically comparing two different groups with with one one different aspect with each of the group. You have the group A that have followed the training and the group B that haven't, and then you compare the outcomes of it. But then here we can see that the group A on this example have a better learning results, have better behavior results. But in terms of performance, we can see that the group B close more deals at the end. You know, they are doing more sales basically than the group A. So then you have to ask yourself some questions like, did the group were wrong? Like in terms of maybe my groups were not accurate enough. Maybe I took only experienced account executive, for instance, on the group B, so they are more likely to close more deals. So there are some questions in terms of methodology that you should ask yourself. And also maybe your training was really great in terms of learning design. It provides a really good learning experience. It also provides a really good understanding of the training. But then maybe the training was not focused on doing enough. So as Antoinette says, it's all about what are your objectives at the end of the training. If you want to increase the performance, maybe you should really focus on the doing part, and maybe rather than focusing on the behavior part, but they are really linked as you got it. But maybe you should take into consideration these aspects. And as Antoinette said earlier as well, numbers are just numbers, and they are just tracks to follow and to dig a little bit more, to have more information, and basically to ask the right questions. They are just numbers, and they just enable you to ask yourself the right question and to dive deep into other tracks to follow in order to explain why, for instance, the group B has better performance results, even though group A has better learning and behavior results. And then let's finish on this sentence, which I think is really great and relate to the beginning of the presentation. Peter Drucker, which is a big author about management and everything, said that we cannot improve what we don't measure. And it's very true. If you do something but you don't take the time to measure, like how you can improve and how you can know that it had an impact. So it's all about measuring the impact of your learning initiatives, because it will help you to know if your learning initiatives are useful, but also to know how you can improve for the future learning initiatives. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
I think it's time for the Q&A part. So you can use the chat if you have any question. Antoinette and myself would be glad to take some time to answer the question.
Yeah, and just for your information, we have created a tool to help you set KPIs and measure some metrics. So maybe we can share this tool with you. We will send you actually the tool after the webinar. So, and also the presentation. Don't hesitate to send us your email address, but I think we have everything into this webinar tool, so it's great. And if you have any question after this session, please feel free to ask us also your questions. We are available to answer to your interrogations.
And if you don't have any question, I actually do have a question for you. Did you know the Kirkpatrick model before this webinar, or like what did you know about it if you knew it already? And if you knew it, and have you already used it to measure the performance of your learning initiatives?
Yeah, good questions.
Farah didn't know it.
Mm.
And Sarah said, yeah, Kirkpatrick is a classic. Definitely, I think it covers pretty much everything. And actually, something we didn't go through, the Kirkpatrick model is something really hard, to be honest. And they added a new dimension recently, which we didn't introduce because we kind of believe that the four are already complete. But I added a fifth dimension, which is based on a return on investment. So basically, you will measure the return on investment more accurately. On this fifth dimension than only measuring the performance. You will measure how much you invest on this training and how did it bring back in terms of initiatives, in terms of performance. So I see it's kind of a mix between the ones that knew it already. Some people knew it but haven't used it yet. So that's good. Thanks a lot for your feedback, Florence.
So we hope you have learned something then. We will measure the impact of this webinar. Be careful because we will send a quiz at the end.
Actually, I would like to measure it like right away, like doing a hot evaluation. If you can put on the chat from 0 to 5, how well your time was well spent to do this training, like 5 being very well spent and 1 not well spent at all.
And you can be honest. Huh?
You can be honest. I'm really like I'm really angry for feedback, to be honest, and I think Antoinette as well.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Great, Jonathan.
That's nice. Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, I think I will definitely grab this book. Thanks a lot, guys.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for your participation also. This is you're welcome, Kevin. Great. So I think like we can close this session, this webinar session. Thank you again to all of you for your participation. We will send you this presentation and also the template that Loic showed you before regarding the satisfaction level evaluation, and also the tool that we have designed for you guys that will help you to measure your learning and training initiatives impact. So don't hesitate to contact us if you have any question, and we wish you a very nice day and week.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.
Bye, guys. Thank you very much.